Hello guys, in this video I want to share with you how you can persist data from your Spring Boot application into a MongoDB database. So we can perform queries like inserting, updating and deleting data from a MongoDB database through our Spring Boot application, and in this video I'll be showing you how we can do this. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the video. So in this demo, I'll be using some tools for creating the application. I'll be using Spring Tool Suite for creating my Spring Boot application and the MongoDB Compass for creating the database. You can follow along with me with these tools. It's very simple to install, or you can use your favorite IDE or database management tools. So I'm going to quickly open Spring Tool Suite. And I'm going to launch it real quick. Spring Tool Suite is a really nice IDE for creating a Spring Boot application. It bootstraps the application from start.spring.io, and you can modify the application from there, which is a really cool feature that I don't see in the Eclipse and other Java IDE community editions. So this is why I really like Spring Tool Suite, and I encourage you to use it. So let's get straight to the demo, and let's create a new starter Spring project. So I'm going to click on new starter Spring project. Let me see if I can increase the font of this. So I'm going to let's call it customer, because we want to save a list of customer in our database. So we are using our Maven dependency manager. Our packaging method here is jar. We are using Java 8 and language is Java. Group is com.example, that's good. Artifact is customer as well. The description is demo for connecting a Spring Boot application to a MongoDB database. That looks good to me. So I'm going to click on next. And here we want to bring in our dependency that would allow us to communicate with the MongoDB database. So if I go down here and I type Spring Data, I'm going to see the different dependency for connecting to databases. Right here on this section for the NoSQL database, you can find Spring Data MongoDB, which is the one that we'll be using in this video. You can also find Spring Data JPA for SQL as well. Alright, so I'm going to click on next to add that dependency to our Spring Boot application, and then click on finish. Okay, so Spring Tool Suite will bootstrap our application right here, and if we open it, and we can see the package is com.example, and then if we open that as well, we'll see the customer application, which is the entry point for our Spring Boot application. Okay, so I'm just going to increase this a little bit. All right, that looks better. So this is our entry point to our application right here. So if I just do a simple print statement, just like this, I can just print a statement to the console like application starts here. Right, so this shows that this is the entry point to our application. So I can run this as a Spring Boot app, and then we're going to see this message right here that application starts here. So nothing fancy at all, it's just a simple Spring Boot application. Next, we want to enter the properties for our database so we can connect to our database from the Spring Boot app. So we go to source main resources. Let's see if we can boost this up. Okay, source main resources, then we go to application properties, and here we can enter all the properties for our database. So we can start by typing spring.data. Our database is MongoDB the host. So we are going to be connecting to a database on my local machine in this video. So for the host, I'm just simply going to use localhost. All right, and for the port, we're going to do spring.data.mongodb, all right, dot port. And the port for the MongoDB database is 27017. All right, and here we're going to give the database a name, and we do spring.data.mongodb.database. All right, and we're going to give it a name. So let's use customers since we use named our application customers. So we're going to be storing customers in our database. So this is how you can create your connection string. You can list out the properties individually. If you have a username and a password for the database, you can just simply do spring.data.mongodb.username, and here you can enter your username for the database, and also you can do spring.data.mongodb.password, and here you can fill in the password for the database. If you are the kind of developer that likes to keep everything simple and you want to do all this in one line, that's also achievable, and you can do that using the URI. So you just do spring.data.mongodb.uri. Okay, and we're going to set this to be mongo colon double slash localhost colon our port number, which is 27017, then slash our database name, which is customers. So whichever method works for you is fine. You can decide to use the URI here, or you can decide to explicitly define everything right here. So whichever method works. In this video, I'm going to be going with the first method because I just like doing that, specifying all the parameters individually, which looks very nice for me. So I'm going to save that. And next we want to create our domain model. So before you persist data to the database, you need a domain model that models the structure of the data that you want to put in the database. So I'm going to create a new package in our main package right here. I'm going to go to new package, and we're going to call it domain. For our domain model, I'm going to hit on finish, and then I'm going to create a new class for it. So class, I'm going to call it customer to store our customers, and I'm going to hit finish, and our customer class is created. And in MongoDB, for us to persist this customer data to our database, we need to use some MongoDB annotations here that we brought from our spring.data.mongodb dependency. So the first one we would use to annotate this customer class would be the document annotation. So I'm going to use the document annotation. Now this document annotation tells Spring that this would be the MongoDB collection. Now you can decide to leave it this way, or you can put a collection name in it. If you leave it like this, the default name for the collection would be customer, or you could change it right here and say the name of our document would be not collection but customers. Sorry. So we're going to have a document for customers, and now let's enter all the fields that we would like to save in MongoDB. So I'm going to start with the first one and say private string, and let's say ID to store the ID. Okay, let's use lowercase. All right, then do private string. Let's store the first name of the customer, and next let's do private string, and then let's store the last name of the customer, and finally let's do private integer, and let's store the age of the customer. So we have all these properties right here. Let's do one more. So private, let's do local date, and let's do created at. All right, so I'm going to import this from java.style. Okay, so we have all the fields that we need. We have all of them set up. So now we have to put the annotation so that Spring Boot can recognize that this entity or this class here would be stored into the MongoDB database. We already annotated the class with the document annotation. For the ID, we want to use the ID annotation. For the fields, we want to use the fields annotation. We also want to use the field annotation for this. For the age, we want to do the same thing. And finally, for the date, we want to use a transient annotation. Now, the transient annotation, we can see that property in our application, but it won't be persisted to our database. So we can just use it for some logging. That's what the transient annotation does. We have a couple of more other annotations that we can use in our domain model. So we've seen a few of them: document, ID, fields, and transient. We also have index, that's used for index searching, that allows you to search for a particular document, but let's just stick to this one in this video. All right, I'm going to import the different annotations here by just clicking on them and then import from spring.data.mongo. I'm doing the same for the transient, and finally I'm going to do it for the ID. Great. All right, so we imported everything that we need for our customer class. Next, we want to create the constructor and then setters and getters so that we'll be able to use this class. I'm going to generate that real quick. I'll go to source and then I'll go to generate setters and getters, and I'm going to check all the fields for that, and then I'll hit generate, and then it generates all the setters and getters for us. And finally, I'm going to generate the constructor, and I can do that as well by going to source and then generate, and then I go to constructor with fields and then uncheck all these fields because I just want the default constructor. So I can do this and remove the super keyword because I don't really need that in this video. So our domain model is complete. We'll set up our customer domain model and everything looks good to me. Next thing we want to do is we want to start to query our MongoDB database. So in order for us to do that, I'll go to our main package right here and I'm going to create a new class, and let's call it application runner. Application runner right here, and let's allow this application runner to implement the command line runner interface. So the command line runner, and we can import this easily from the Spring Boot framework there, and then we can add the unimplemented method. So as you can see, we have this run method that we need to add code for. So before we do that, we just need to enter our Mongo template. So for us to query a Mongo database using the Spring Boot application, we can do that in two ways. We can do that using the Mongo template, or we can do that creating a repository interface. So first, I'm going to show you how we can do it using the Mongo template, and then we're going to see how we can do it using the repository interface. So we simply create a variable here that we can inject to our func method with dependency injection. So we're going to bring in the Mongo template. So the Mongo template has lots of methods that allows us to be able to persist data from the Spring Boot application to the MongoDB database. We're going to call it Mongo template as well. Template. All right, and then we're going to import it from springdata.mongo core right here. And now we're going to generate our constructor for it as well. So I'll go to source and then generate constructor using fields. And yes, we want to add the Mongo template. All right, we're just going to take away the super keyword because we don't need that. And our Mongo template is ready for use. So first thing we want to do, we want to create a function here called seed that is going to allow us to make calls to our database. And I'm just going to create this method real quick. You'll generate our method called seed. And what this method is going to do is this method would create an instance of our customer domain model and populate it, and then we can save that customer in the database. Let me show you what I mean real quick. So I'm going to say customer, this is our entity. I'm going to say cost1 equal to new customer. We're just creating an instance of that object right here. All right, and let's quickly import that from our domain model. Okay, so I can do cost1 dot set first name. All right, I'm going to set first name as Henry, and I'm going to do cost1 dot set last name. I'm going to set last name, my last name right here. Set the age. I'm going to set this 24. And what else do we have there? I'm going to set created at. Then we want to pass in local date dot now. All right, just want to import the local date from java.time. All right, and okay, we don't have any errors. So we created our first customer. I'm just going to copy this quick so that we have about 3 customers that we can send into our database. I'm going to paste the next one and the third one. All right, so this is cost1. I'm going to call this other one cost2. Okay, cost2, cost2, and cost2. This is cost2, 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 2. And for the name, we're just going to call the customer John Doe. And let's say he's 14 years. And I'm still having an error here. What does he say? Duplicate local variable cost2. Okay. Let's just cut this. So we have cost1, and then down, let's just paste that again, and let's change this to cost3. So this is 3, it's 3, this is 3, this is 3, and this is 3. So for the first name, let's say Frank, and for the last name, let's say Lampard, my favorite football player of all time, and I think he's about, let's say, 43 years old. Alright, so we have the data that we want to save to our database, and we're going to use our Mongo template to do that. So let's try it out. So we're going to say this dot Mongo template dot, we can use the insert keyword, alright, and then we can insert each of the individual item. So like cost 1, I'm going to add a semicolon here. I'll just copy this and then paste it down, and we can make this cost 2 and cost 3. Alright, so you create a new customer right here, and then you save them to the database using your Mongo template. So let's try this out and see if it works. Before then, let's just annotate this class with the service so MongoDB can find it. I'm going to click on this and import from Spring Framework. Looks better now. I'm going to go to the customer application. I'm going to run this as a Spring Boot application, and let's see. Alright, we don't have any errors. If I open up MongoDB Compass, let's see if our database is there. MongoDB Compass. Let's open it up. So we have MongoDB Compass right here. I'm just going to increase the font so you can see right here. So for us to connect to our database using MongoDB Compass, we click on a new connection, and then we can fill in the connection fields individually. Here on localhost, we can put the host name and the port, and then we can connect. Right, so we have our database. We have one here, customers, what we created right here. And if I click on it, we see all the data that we entered to the database. So we have the first name, we have the last name, and then we have the age. But we don't see the other field, which is called created at, because that's a transient field. So that field doesn't get added. Okay, so that's how we can create insert data to our MongoDB database. Alright, so one way we could do this, as we've seen so far, is using the MongoDB template. The other way is to use the Mongo repository interface. So you can use the MongoDB template to persist data to your database, or you can use a Mongo repository interface, and then you can inject the interface through dependency injection to your application, just like the Mongo template, and call its methods. Alright, but before we do that, I really don't like this way we inserted this data to our database, because we are going 3 round trips to our database. First, we insert the first customer, the second customer, and the third. So we are making 3 calls to the database, but we can achieve the same thing using just 1 call to the database. Let me quickly show you how you can do that. So we're going to use the Mongo template also. So the Mongo template dot, instead of using insert, we can use insert all. And this is going to take a collection, and then we can add everything at once with just one statement. So let's create a collection for this. So I'm going to create a list of customers right here. Customers, right? And I'm going to create, this is a customer, and it's equal to a new customer. All right, No, not a new customer. Let's use the arrays method to add all our customer. Let's do to list as list, sorry. And then we can pass all the individual customers that we have. So cost 1, cost 2, and cost 3. All right. Let's quickly import our list from java.util. Okay, and then let's end this with a semicolon. Great, so we have our customers here, and then we want to insert all the customers at once. All right, so let's put this cost to, would be nice to call it customers because there are more than one. All right, so this is going to insert all the customers to the database. Well, before we do this, let's clear up the database. Let's see how we can delete the element first that we already have, clear it out, and let's add it back again. So to do that, I'm going to add another function before we call the seed. I'm going to call a clear method right here, and this is going to clear the database. So I'm going to create the method right here. And for our clear method, we're going to use the Mongo template. Mongo template dot. Now for us to remove data from the database, the method that we can call from the MongoDB template is called remove. So to insert, we use the insert method, or we can also use save. I'm coming back to the difference between insert and save. For the Mongo template, we can use the remove method. And what does this remove method take? It takes a query, and then it takes the name of the class that we want to remove, which for us is our customer class. So customer.class, right? And then we have to import the query from Mongo query. We need a new instance of that. So we import it from Spring Framework Mongo Core. All right, this is going to remove what we already have in the database, and the seed method is going to add a new record. Let's just comment out the seed method and call the clear, so it clears everything we already have in the database. I'm going to run the customer application again. I can do that right here. This is quicker, and I just right click and restart. So our application is getting restarted, does that successfully, and we have all these records right here. If I refresh, you can see that the record is gone because we have removed those records from our database using the MongoDB template does remove. So this is how you can remove, delete data from your database. So let's add back this data using this single line. So doing that, I'm going to call again the seed method right here, and then I'm going to restart the application. So if I do that, our application runs successfully. And now if I refresh it, we get back our data. We get the first name, we get the age, and we get the last name as well. All right. So we have our data from the database. We can insert and we can delete. You can also print this list of customers. Let's say we want to print it to the console. Going to use our for loop, and let's say for each customer, I'm going to use a small c for each customer in customers. You know what, let's just use the loop counter variable for int I is equal to 0, I is less than customers, dot, should be dot size. Okay, and then I plus plus, and now we want to system dot, no, for short we can just use sys out, and then we want to print out the customers. We want to print our customer.get I. All right, let's run this method again and see if we get it in our console. I'm going to restart. And you can see we get the different ID for each of the 3 customers that we added. So we can also do .get I. We can see the different values here. So I'm just going to do get first name, and then I would concatenate it with the last name. So I'm going to do an enter here, and then let's concatenate that with the last name. Okay. We can just add a space in between them. All right, so if I run this again, restart. All right, so we have first name and first name, but I meant to say last name. I'm just going to quickly change that. So we have the last name, and then I quickly rerun that. Okay. So every time we have this data here added to our database, and if I refresh the database, you see that we still have just 3 documents in our database. And this is because, first of all, what I'm doing in this program is first I'm using this method here to clear out the database. I'm using Mongo template to remove, using the customer class, remove any item that's in the database, and here I create a new customer item, and then here I'm just displaying it to the console, and here I'm inserting it to the database with just one trip to the database. Using this method here called insert all is what we call bulk insert to the database. So we are inserting it with just one trip to the database, in contrast to just using the insert method that goes round trip to the database. So this is one way of inserting and deleting data in a Spring Boot application working with MongoDB database. So the first way I mentioned is that we can use the Mongo template. Another way we can do it is we can use the Mongo repository interface, and we can inject that to this our service right here. So let's quickly see how we can do that. All right, so in order for us to do that, I'm going to quickly create another package right here, a new package, and I'm going to call this, let's call it repositories, or repositories. Yeah, let's say repositories. Maybe we're going to have more than one. And we're going to add a new class, and we're going to call it customer repository. All right, now we have the customer repository, and the first thing we want to do here is we want to annotate it with the repository annotation, right? This is the same thing you do when you have a repository, you're using the Spring JPA and you want to persist data to SQL database. First thing is you annotate it with the repository annotation. In terms of MongoDB, we are doing the same. and we are annotating it with the repository annotation. So I'm going to import that, and we want our customer repository class to extend our Mongo repository. Now, one thing you want to take note here is that we are not creating a class here, but we are creating an interface. So this should be an interface, and our Mongo repository, we can import it now. If you're using a class here, you won't get IntelliSense for the Mongo repository, so take note of that. So we can import our Mongo repository, which is coming from here, and now we can add our domain model here, what we want to persist. And in this example, our domain model is customer. And one other thing here is you want to check the data type for the ID of the customer, which is the primary key, and here we're using a string. So back to our customer repository interface, we have Mongo repository customer, and the other template parameter there will be a string because the primary key there is a string. So now we have a red line here because we need to import our domain model, which is customer. So I'm going to import it from our domain. All right, so our repository interface looks clean. So now we're going to go back to our application runner. And here we want to remove the Mongo template because we've seen how we can use the Mongo template. Now we want to see how we can use the Mongo repository. So I'm going to create a new private variable. I'm going to call it our customer repository. We are just injecting it to our service using dependency injection like we did with the Mongo template. And I'm going to call this repository. Okay, semicolon there. And next we want to generate our constructor, but before that, seems like I made a mistake here with my spelling. So let's see, customer repo. All right, let me just go back to this. So this is customer repository. So there's a spelling here, typo, customer repository. And let's see, we have options here. So this is really cool that you can rename it, like just click in here, rename file to customer repository. Great, this looks good. And then when we go back to our application runner, this should be good now. Yes, it's good. So I just import our customer repository. And next you can use your AutoWire annotation to inject it to this service, or you can use the constructor. I like using the constructor, so I'm just going to generate the constructor for it. I'm going to go to source, generate constructor using field, and we're using the repository. All right, so we have our constructor. I'm just going to remove the super keyword because we don't need that. I'm going to remove all those white spaces. All right, now we have our customer repository, and we want to, first of all, we want to use it to clear the data in our database. We'll see how to do this with Mongo template. For the repository, I'm going to say this dot repository dot, the method you want to use for the repository is delete all. And the good thing about this method is that it takes no parameters at all, and you can just call this and it deletes all the data in your repository. So this is a very nice way to clear out the data. Let's see if that works real quick. So I'm going to comment out the seed method. All right, I'm going to delete this because we don't have the Mongo template. In just a minute, we're going to see how we can insert data using our repository, but let me just quickly run this. So I'm going to go here and restart our application. And then when I open MongoDB Compass, if I refresh this, you see that we have no data here because it has been deleted using our repository because we cleared that using repository.delete. Oh, this is really sweet, right? All right, so then let's see how we can add data using the repository. So I'm just going to do this dot repository. Okay, dot. Now for us to add data, we have a lot of methods here. You can see you have more methods here. You can count. You can count how many data do you have in the database. You can count that. You can also do this dot repository dot. You can insert. So we wanted to insert, right? So the thing is that here we don't have insert all. The insert that we have here in the repository method can take a list or a collection or can take a single object. So but here we have a list of customers, so I'm just going to type in my customers here. And this is just for illustration that we can count. So we can just sys out this to the console. I'm just going to do sys out. Okay, and then we're going to count how many repository we have there. Okay, but the main thing that we want to do is we want to insert into the repository. All right, so I'm going to restart this application. Great, it's running, no errors. If I go back to MongoDB Compass and then I refresh it, I don't see the data, but our application is working. So let's quickly check what the problem is. Let's just delete this. And yes, we didn't call our seed method, so the problem wasn't with that. So we're going to uncomment our seed method, and yes, we can have just going to bring back this count here. Okay, and then we can have the seed method being called. It wasn't called. All right, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to run this one more time. Hopefully it's going to work this time. All right, so we see that we have our data here and we have 0 here because it was deleted here. But when we go to the database and I refresh it, you can see we have back the data. And now we are entering this data not with the Mongo template, but we are using the Mongo repository. But this print statement here was used after we inserted the data. If I just put it just after it and run, you're going to see that we have 3 items there. Okay, so you can see that we have 3 items there inserted to our database. All right, so this is the way we can insert, we can delete data from using our Spring application and our MongoDB database. We can insert or delete data using the Mongo template class, and then we can use the Mongo repository interface to do this. And you can explore a lot of methods that we have from these 2 classes. The Mongo template has lots of other methods that you can explore. Apart from using the insert method to insert into the database, you also have the save method, which the save method not only allows you to insert, but also allows you to update an item if you have the given ID. All right, so there are other methods there that we can explore, but basically this is the way we can persist data from our Spring Boot application to our MongoDB database. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up for me. Thank you and bye.